Playing big trick shots on a snooker table really isn't easy. In fact, potting just one ball on a snooker table can be quite a challenge at times and requires a lot of concentration. So how come pool players are able to make such complex trick shots seem easy? Of course, a lot of this will be down to the differences in the table. It's a lot harder to play these shots on a snooker table because a snooker table is a lot bigger with pockets that are a lot tighter. But a lot of it is just inside information. Because these shots are a little bit harder on a snooker table, people don't want to share their secret tips and tricks. But this video finally exposes all of those secrets for everybody. The secret of potting 6 or even just a few balls on a single shot requires us to get a lot right. So we're going to start with the basics and quickly work our way up. This starts with just one ball. To pot this, all we need to do is get the cue ball directly in line between it and the pocket like this. Talking of lining balls up, quick little trick here: if you want to set up 2 balls to be close together pointing at a pocket, just use the edge of your cue. It's both a quick and accurate way of getting the balls exactly where you want them. But back to potting the ball. If we just aim to play the cue ball into the space directly behind the red, then we'll automatically play it at the right angle and pot the ball. This works most of the time, but not always. If you use exactly the same method to pot a thinner shot, like this one, you'll end up missing it thick. Here's why. For the brief fraction of a second when they're making contact, the cue ball and object ball move as one unit. This impact throws the object ball very slightly offline, which means if you don't allow for it, it's going to miss on the thick side of the pocket. The thinner the shot gets, the more of an effect it has, so when it gets thinner and thinner, you've got to start allowing for more and more throw. Most snooker players will allow for this naturally, but it is something we need to consider if we want to start potting more than one ball on a single shot. If I've lined these 2 balls up touching and I strike the first one, then there's no way the second one can miss. That is, unless I play the shot from up here. Once again, for a small period of time, both object balls move as one unit. Even if the plant's set for the centre of the pocket, striking it at an angle is easily enough to throw the second ball very slightly offline. This means we can pop 2 reds at once so long as we get them in the right place and touching. If they're touching, it means we're going to get a predictable outcome. Now, to get them in the right place, we can use our cues. We know we've got to go very fractionally wide of the pocket to pop the second red. Now, all this means is we need to know the right place to pop the first red. So we can use a bit of trial and error here, because at a certain point up or down the table, we're going to be in exactly the right place to knock this red into this pocket. We just need to find out where it is. So that missed here, so we need to come up the table just a fraction. For this to work, the 2 balls need to be touching and a couple of ball lengths up from the pink spot, aiming for the side cushion to very slightly miss the pocket. Even though this is fairly simple, a lot of the upcoming shots have this basic element in it somewhere, so it's important you can play it well. To pot 3 balls at once, we look to a shot that was played when Steve Davis appeared on the Morecambe and Wise show. It's difficult to see exactly what's going on with this shot, and you need a fair amount of skill to be able to play it well. Initially, it's a very similar shot to the first one. You can line up 2 balls with your cue just above the pink spot, which will mean the first one will go into that pocket and the second one will go across into that pocket. The difference, however, is the extra red, which needs to be brought in close and be nearer to the far red than the first one. The further the red is away, the longer it's going to take the cue ball to come into contact with it, which is what we need to make the shot work. You're looking to strike half of the first red. This should pop the first 2 balls and move the cue ball over to the third. Now, the harder you play this shot, the more you're going to overcut this red, and the slower you play it, the more you're going to undercut the red. You've just got to get the pace right. You want to play this shot with right hand side and top spin. This will both create the correct angle as well as keeping the reds out of each other's way as much as possible. But before I unveil the secrets of potting 4 balls on a single shot, we're going to find Zahaslan from Aktobe, Kazakhstan. We can pot 4 balls in a couple of ways using 2 fairly standard pool trick shots. For the first one, we're going to need the balls in this position again. But at the same time here, we're also going to be putting 2 reds into the middle pockets, and we can do that by lining them up, touching the cue ball. For the same reasons as before, they need to be lined up to miss on the thin side of the pocket. The 2 things that usually go wrong here is when you line up all the balls they're not touching, or you haven't lined them up evenly down the table, which only has to be about right, but if you're hitting one ball thicker than the other one, it can result in one missing or something like that. You want to be playing this centre ball, aiming for the first of the 2 reds down the table. I don't really think it matters, but I usually play this as a topspin shot. The second way is different and probably a little bit more difficult, but you might encounter some of the same problems. You need to line up 2 reds that are both touching the cue ball and aiming for the corner pockets, once again missing just a little bit on the thinner side. And to pot the other 2 reds, the cue ball needs to be right in the centre of the table so it can go straight through the gap. If you don't line up the balls evenly enough, then you're not going to strike the right point on that red, which might be good enough to pot it, but you've also got to screw back and knock this red in. And that alone is quite a difficult shot and requires you to have fairly good cueing. If you're not confident you've got the cue power to screw back that far, have a look at the video in the card because that can really help you out with your cueing. But enough of just potting 4 balls, we're going for 5 now on one shot. Handily 2 of them are going to be going in that pocket there. However, this does require a very accurate setup and a good ability to play snooker. Another quick tip, if you find the balls aren't quite going in the right place at times, hold them in place and gently tap on top of them with another ball. Here's how it works. You play the cue ball into that red with left hand side. That should knock that red into there, and that red into that pocket down there. That's fairly straightforward. But the difficult bit is to get that red to go down into that pocket there. You need to have it very slightly offset back from these 2 reds, and that should create the right angle for that to go in that pocket. At the same time, the cue ball is going to overtake this red, go round 2 cushions over there, hit this cushion again, and pop this red back in this pocket here. Spinning the white round 3 cushions and potting the red that's over the pocket is difficult, but it's not as difficult as it looks. Oh my god, I thought I was going to miss. Okay, 6 balls, and once again I'm going to show you 2 ways how to do that. This is very similar to the last shot, except it looks a lot more complicated and chaotic. But you'll be alright once you know how to set up the balls. Once again, you play off the outside ball with left hand side, sending the white over to that cushion. This red then knocks into this red, which sends that red into the pocket over there, and this red into here. This red that's struck by this red goes across the table into that middle pocket, and that red goes in off that red into that pocket. If you get these reds roughly lined up, and this is the difficult bit of the shot, that red then goes all the way down into that pocket, and the cue ball goes around 2 cushions there, onto the 3rd cushion, and down onto that red in the corner pocket. This is difficult to set up right every single time, and that's why Steve Davis used other balls to widen the pockets. The 2 reds that point into the corner pocket here have to be set up a little bit wider than normal. And the second 2 reds need to be further away from the cushion than the first 2, otherwise it simply won't work. And again, you need to play it with topspin and left hand side. After we find Leo from Quebec City, Canada, we're going to be looking at the secrets of how to play the butterfly shot, the first shot I played in this video. This is very difficult to get right on a snooker table, mostly because you've got to set it up in a position that's awkward to get to. This is the final shot, and getting this right on a snooker table is far easier to explain than it is to set up and actually play. When you play the shot, the middle 2 reds are going to go forward, so you've got to come back a little bit from the middle pockets to actually get them to go towards them. You then have to line up both the outside balls towards the far jaw by a little bit. And then in exactly the same way, you have to line up the final 2 reds incredibly carefully so they just miss the far jaw. You want to put these reds about a foot up from the blue spot, but it's worth marking it with a bit of chalk, because if these 2 reds go long of the middle pocket, you'll know you put them too far down the table, and if they go short, you know you put them too far up the table. But if you don't know where you put them, then you're not going to know where they need to go. It's almost entirely about setup. You just need to play the cue ball in the gap between the two sets of reds and hope you lined everything up right. The only problem you may have is the cue ball may hit these two reds and nudge one of these end reds. So to stop that, you probably want to play it as a stun shot, because that should stop it getting in a way. But other than that, if this goes wrong, you just haven't put one of the reds in quite the right place. 4, that's not bad. So now it's just a case of making tiny adjustments to the setup so all the balls that miss now go towards the pockets. As with all of the shots, this does require a little bit of practice, but you will get it over time. Potting more than 6 reds on one shot is going to be incredibly difficult, that is, unless we use some equipment, and that's going to make it a lot easier. Although you can never guarantee it's definitely going to work. Hopefully you now have a greater insight in how to play multi-ball trick shots, and if you're interested in improving your snooker further, then have a look at these 2 videos, and remember, don't just watch, play, and make the commitment to becoming a better player by subscribing to the channel and visit the website. See you later.